Welcome again to Bloomerang Academy. We are glad that you are all joining us today, where we are talking about grant tracking and how you can use Bloomerang to help with your grant tracking process. Joining us today is our database consultant, Di Cox. Welcome, Di.
Hi there, and thanks, Diana. A few things off the bat. Thank you, everyone, for being here. If you guys have done a coaching with me on this, you've had the really abridged version of it. I can whip this out in about 20 minutes. But today we're going to take our time and we're going to really walk through some different grant scenarios. And we're going to make sure that you guys kind of understand the workflow, all of the settings you need, and then you will definitely get a ton of materials after this class. So we can send you screenshots. You can get the full transcript if you need that. You'll get the slides, you'll get the recording. So there's a lot of materials for you. And then the support team can help if you have any other questions on your setup. So let me get my screen shared here.
Absolutely. While Di is getting that set up, the last slide is also our resources. So that's going to include links out to everything that we're going to show you today. Thanks, Di.
Yeah. All right, let's get started here. So today we're going to talk about how to use Bloomerang specifically for grant management. If you don't use Bloomerang right now and you're using another system, a lot of this will probably be adaptable. So, still make sure that you kind of have an understanding of how you could implement this into your system. But after this agenda slide, the rest of the class is going to be in the system today. So we're going to be talking about not only how to enter grants in Bloomerang, but then how to track the deadlines involved in managing your grants, and also your relationship with those funders. So as you can see here on the agenda, we are going to be talking about a lot of settings and then notes custom fields. We recommend for Bloomerang that you track your grants through notes. And so we'll go through that workflow. We will also talk about what to do when you receive that award. We can talk about grant reporting, past grant tracking. So, if you haven't implemented this, there's always a lot of questions when we do this class live on, well, what about for past years? How much detail should we go back and add? So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then, like Diana said, we'll have some resources for researching grant opportunities. And if there's time after that, we'll do some question and answer. So I'm going to pop over into Bloomerang now. Yes, that worked. All right. And I will also let you guys know that my database is all Star Wars. So there's going to be a whole bunch of Star Wars references. Kind of ignore anything outside of this if you aren't looking to add other custom fields and things like that. And if you don't get the references, that's totally fine. So we're going to look at a whole bunch of different records during this training, and we're going to look at them with different kinds of grant information on them. And so we will take a look at a brand new grant prospect, and we're planning to apply for a grant with them. We don't have it yet. We'll take a look at a record that has already awarded a multi-year grant, so it's covering a couple of different years. One where we were not awarded the grant at all, and then a grant that we kind of can rely on and we know we're going to get it every year. And then finally, we'll take a look at a constituent record where we've been granted two separate grants by that same organization, and we're trying to manage them in tandem. So we'll take a look at what that record looked like last year, and we can kind of talk about that workflow. But before we actually hop in and jump to those records to take a look at them, we need to talk about setting up your database in order to track your grants. So the first thing that you'll need to do is set up an appeal for your grant tracking. So if we come into the settings and then go to appeals, you can see that I have some grant ones in here. As a note, I do recommend, we're not receiving 2019 grants anymore. So coming in and deactivating this, I just wanted you guys to kind of see what that would look like looking at multi-year grant information. You can also just create an appeals called grant if you would prefer not to have dates on that. It's completely up to you guys and your specific workflows when it comes to reporting, communicating with finances, all the rest of that. As far as funds go, most grants are not unrestricted. If you are getting unrestricted grants, like don't tell anyone about that, save that unicorn, keep it for yourself. But for everybody else, you have a couple of options for how to set up funds for your grants. If you have pretty simple, straightforward grants, I know that this grant, the whole thing is going to go to my veterans of the like my veteran rebel fund here. You can just put it under that. You can also always split gifts. So if it's going to 2 different places, you can split that out. If your grants are really complicated, so you might have some unrestricted, some restricted for a program, some restricted for something else going on at your organization, there's really no shame in creating a fund called, grants. It's a little bit harder to track where that's going, but you can do that through either appeals or campaigns, depending on how you're working that out. So again, create the funds that make sense, but what you would, the preferred method is to put it where it's going when that makes sense and it's possible. And then as far as your campaigns go, some people prefer to create a campaign specific to their grants. With multi-year grants, sometimes that's a better option. But usually if it's just going to be for your, the term of your fiscal year or your calendar year, putting it under that annual campaign or that specific program campaign that you have is fine and makes a lot of sense there. So after you have decided how to set up your campaigns, funds, and appeals, and you have set those up, the next thing to do is go in and set up your custom fields under notes. So back here to the settings cog, we'll come down to note. And you can see here, I will move it up for you. We'll move grant fields to the top. All right, so what I did was I went in and I created a new category called grant fields. So you click new category, call it grant fields, and that's how you get this new box. And then after this box grant fields is created, you're going to create the different fields that you need. As you can see over here, most of mine are free-form date, free-form currency. There's one pick multiple here, and there are 2 pick ones. So grant type may or may not be something that you track at your organization. So again, modify these to what you need. You can take grant type. You can see I have foundation, government, other. Other is kind of my catch-all. If you guys need to break that out further, break it out further. There's corporate grants. Some other nonprofits will give grants to nonprofits to help out with efforts. So again, you guys can go through and make that really specific, or you can just have other, and it is a pick one. So it's either going to be a foundation grant or a government grant. There are very, very few instances where it would be a multi. So I would recommend trying to keep that as clean as possible. Your grant status is just going to be the phase that you're in. So my pretend organization here, we do our grant prospecting and research in the tool as well, which we find to be helpful when we decide, okay, this grantor is not a good fit for our organization. We can add notes in there. And then later on, if someone says, oh, organization X has a grant available, if they're in your database, you can go in and check out those notes and say, oh, we decided this might not be a best fit because they want X, Y, and Z to happen, and that's not what we're doing. So we're doing the research phase. Pending is once you've submitted and you're waiting for it to come back. Awarded, obviously you've been told how much you're getting. Partially awarded, that's, you got part of it, but not all of it. And then declined is you did not receive your grant funding. Again, these are just going to be dates, notification information, deadlines. And then down here, we do have the grant report schedule. And I think this is an important field to take a look at because your grant reporting can be quarterly, monthly, just one annual report at the end of your grant term. There are also some grantors who want things on a slightly different schedule. So, you can add in all of those potential report deadlines for your grants. And we've made it a pick multiple because, you might have one that wants a quarterly grant report and then that final grant report. Or you might have one that wants all three. You might have one that just wants an annual report. And I kind of say that if you got hit by a bus tomorrow and someone else had to pick up your grant reporting, having them go in and take a look at what expectations there are for reporting on this grant can be a really easy way for them to wrap their head around what all goes into this and what's going to be needed from them. And then amount spent, again, some organizations like to track how much of that grant they've spent down, and they kind of want to quickly see it here. Completely optional if that's not the kind of thing you're tracking, because that's not how it works. It's not just pulling down those funds when you need it. It's monthly X amount is going out. It's not necessarily a field that you would want to have in there. So that's the field list that you're going to need for tracking notes in Bloomerang for your grants. And again, we have screenshots of all of this, so we can make sure that those go out so that you guys don't have to furiously write down what to do with all of this. We can show you that. So next, we're going to hop into some workflows. So for kind of a quick overview of the process that we're going to go through, for each individual grant, you're going to have one single note, and then you're going to use tasks and interactions to manage that workflow. So every one of your granting organizations, or in this case, your potential granting organization, should be entered in as a constituent. And then, we'll go ahead and hop in and take a look at it. Then you're going to enter your note for each of the grants that you're applying for. And then you're going to add the note date as the date of your either researching begins if you're doing that step, or you've submitted, so that date. And that's kind of that basic workflow. So you're going to have your organizations in there. You're going to have a note for them for every single grant, and then you are going to use interactions and tasks to manage those workflows. So let's go in and take a look at one that we are researching at this point. So I'm going to go into the government of Naboo. And they have a grant coming up. So it is a galactic battle cleanup grant. So when we click in here, you can see some of the information that I have added in here. So the name of the grant, what they're covering. So 5 grants up to $100,000, or galactic credits in this case, to aid in post-battle cleanup activities. And then I've also written in here what we're going to use the grant for. So our purpose for this is doing cleanup on the ice planet Hoth. And then I've added a note here. I sent a letter of inquiry on 3/15/2021. So that's kind of what I have in this notes field so far. When we come down here, you can see that I have filled out as far as I know. We've not been awarded that yet, but I filled out as far as I know what's happening with this. So this is a government grant. We've done our research, and we've started the process. So this is going to be pending. So the proposal deadline is going to be 6/10/2021. We would update this as soon as we have it. Our expected notification date is 8/1/2021, and then we know that the final report deadline will be 1/1/2023. So we're going to ask for that full $10,000. So the reason that we have a date in here is that this date corresponds to an interaction. So let me save this, and we're going to go back to the timeline. So we should be able to go in and say, okay, So this should be 3/15. No, that's right, 6/15, sorry. So 6/15/2021, we submitted that letter of inquiry. So this is a great thing to note here. I mistyped. So I can come in here and change this to 6/15/2021, and now that information matches up. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to actually go in and submit, the grant proposal. So we'll come down here and say that proposal deadline is 6/10/2021. So I'm going to create tasks now. So I need to create a task to write that proposal. So I'm going to set this for 5/15/2021, and I'm going to say begin writing proposal. And my purpose is going to be other, and my channel is going to be other, right? Because I'm just going to begin writing this. So I'm going to save this. I want to be done writing this. However, I don't know what's going on with dates here. Sorry, that's okay. So letter of inquiry sent in March. This one we're going to just delete. All right, so I'm going to begin writing my proposal in 2 days. I want to have that completely written by May 25th. So I'm going to come in here and say May 25th. And the subject is going to be submit proposal for review. And I'm going to say submit to ED for review. And then purpose is going to be other, and channel, I'm going to send it through email. So those are my next 2 steps. So on May 15th, I'm going to start writing it. I'm giving myself 10 days to write this proposal. And then on the 15th, my goal is to submit that to my ED so that they can review it, check for typos, make sure all of my information is in there. And that's going to set me up to be able to submit that grant proposal on time. So that is how you start tracking it through tasks. Once a task is complete, you have 2 options. If it's a task like this one where we're not communicating with the potential grantor at this point, we've just set something up for us to do. When I've completed that task, I can come in here and I have 2 options. I can complete it as a task, or I can save it as an interaction. Because I'm not interacting with the government of NABU, I'm just completing a task in conjunction with this grant, I would just come up here and say complete, and then complete date. Obviously, we're future dating it for these purposes, but the date that you begin, you would, make sure that checkbox is marked. So this shows me that I've completed this task. So moving into the future a little further, let's say that we have submitted it and everything's good there. So I'm going to complete this again as a task, and this is going to be on 5/25. And so my next task now is going to be submitting that proposal. So I'm going to come in and create a new task. It's due 6/10, but I want to get it out a few days before. So I want this to send out on 6/5. So I'm going to say submit grant application. Purpose is going to be other, and then I'm going to mail it out. So we're going to save this. And then at this point, once we've completed this task, this one's going to get switched to an interaction. I have actually done something that has interacted with the grantor. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to complete this task and save it as an interaction. I'm going to say that this happened on 6/5. Save it. And now you can see the little bubble shows it's an interaction. The nice thing here is I can attach things to interactions. So I could submit the grant application, attach that grant application that I'm submitting right here. So if later on anybody needs to review what I sent in, they can quickly come and find it. Since I've completed this task here, 6/5/2021, I'm going to come back to that original note, and I'm going to update here, sent grant application, and I'm going to say, I don't know what's happening there. That's fine. 6/5/2021. And so I can say proposal submission date 6/5/2021. We're still not expecting to get this back until 8/1. So I can save this, and now this note is updated. The next thing that I would recommend doing, you have kind of a couple of options with this date. So some people want this note to follow them. So we could change this now to 6/5/2021 because that's where we're at in the process. Some people want it to track with that expected notification date. So we could do 8/1/2021. And some people would prefer it to kind of be pinned to the top with whatever that final report deadline would be. So to show you what that looks like, we're going to move this to 1/1/2023. And we'll save that. And now we see this blue bar that says hiding entries from future years. So when we click on this, we can see this. It's always pinned at the top. You're never accidentally going to trip over it. And then you know when that final report deadline is up there. So again, you have your options for figuring out where you want that note to be. I will say that I think if you are dealing with any organizations where you have more than one grant from them, it makes more sense to change the date of the note in tandem with what your tasks are, so that you can kind of see where each one is and you're not kind of accidentally tripping over them elsewhere. But whatever works best for you and your organization is in fact the right call. So now we're just waiting. That is just kind of pending. A couple of other cool things that we can do here. If you have an online submission portal for your grants, you can link a URL in Bloomerang. So you'll come into the attachment and you have two options. You can add a file or you can link to the web. And so you can add your username and password here in the notes section, or you can create some additional grant fields for that under this custom field section. But when you click on this, it's going to take you straight out to that page. And then you can just drop in your username and password and get things submitted right there. So it really does keep everything in one spot. It makes it really manageable. If someone has to inherit your grants for any reason at the organization, they have everything right here that they need for that. And so it can kind of streamline that process. It's also, again, really helpful, if you're properly attaching everything in here. Next year, if you decide to apply for this same grant, everything you previously submitted is right at your fingertips. You're not looking through a binder. You're not looking through a file cabinet. You are not trying to remember what drive it was added to on the cloud. It is all accessible right here. So obviously, if your organization requires you to keep binders, or if some of your grantors do, still do that. But this is really that one-stop shop for everything surrounding this grant. So that is the general workflow on how you're going to track everything with your grants here. And your tasks, like I said, you have two different kinds. You have your to-do list tasks, and then you also have all of those tasks for your actual interactions with the organization. The really nice thing as well with tasks is once you get the grant, you're going to know what all of the tasks are for that grant period. You're going to know every submission deadline. You're going to know, who you need to reach out to internally to gather numbers from, depending on the type of grant. And you can set all of your tasks out for the future. So you can set up when every single quarterly, annual, monthly, report is going to be due. You can set a task a few days before that for yourself to go through and reach out to the different teams that you need to gather that information from. And then you can report on all of that. So if we go in, I'm going to save this, but I am going to come in here and I am going to change these back to active so that we can take a look at this. All right, so now if we go back to the home page here, we can see different tasks. So I'm an admin user, so I'm seeing all tasks. I'm also seeing my tasks. So if I click here, this is all of my tasks. And I can take a look at everything. I can take a look at everything that's overdue, which is in this salmon color, everything that's due soon, and then there's a due later. So due later is past this month. So if you are entering all of those tasks in, you're going to have a really long list of tasks that are due, this month and then in future months. So what you can do at that point is come in and build out a report for yourself. So we can come in here and do a new tasks report. And we have different ways to break this down. So as you can see, there are a whole bunch of pieces here that we can report on. So the first thing I'm going to do is do this by user. I just want to see my tasks. So I'm going to say that this is me. We're going to only use myself. And then I want to see everything that's due next month, for example. So due date is during, and I can say either this month, next month, whatever you want to look at. So actually, let's say this month. So everything due this month. And then this is going to show me that I have nothing due this month. So let's say next month. Let's say last month. All right, that's fun. You can still do this, I promise. So you can pull out a list of all of your tasks, and then you can come in and you can schedule this report. And I can name this, dies to do. Save it, and I can schedule it. So I want this to come out monthly on the first of the month, and I want it to hit my inbox at 8 a.m. And then it's going to go to me. And I'm going to say tasks due this month. And then, so this subject is going to be the subject of the email that's sent. The contact is kind of the body. So, you can break that down. If you're doing major gifts and grants, for example, and you're only looking for tasks that are specific to grants, you can say grant tasks this month. If it's both, you can say combination of major giving and grant information, whatever you want to fill out in this content box here. And then you'll save and schedule, and it will attach the CSV of everything that you need to do every month. You can also go in and you can pull notes reports. So we can go in and we can build a report from scratch and go to notes. And then you can see there's 24 notes on here. So if I want to take a look at, things in my notes that are specific to grants, I can come in and I can look for a field that says grant status, and I want to see everything that is pending, awarded, and partially awarded. So now we're down to 7. So you can see the date that's listed out. You can see the organization that it is attached to. And then you have all of that note information. And that is why it's helpful to track everything in the notes with the dates, because then you can see what dates things have happened in there. And it will show you that full history of that note and everything that you've done on that grant. So it can be a really, really quick summary view of what's going on with your grants. And then again, if you need to say, oh, I want to see what was submitted on that day, you can go to that record, you can click in and you can take a look at that interaction. If you're using attachments at that point, you can open up that attachment, download it if you need to, whatever you need to do with that. But it quickly will show you every single step that's going on with this grant. And you can again sort by your status, you can sort on the amounts, you can sort on like any of your custom fields, all of that information so that you know what's happening with your grants weekly, daily, monthly, however you need to look at that. And then again, you can take this and you can save and schedule this report, and you can send it to any stakeholders. So if your ED needs to see this, if your programs directors need to see this, if anybody who is part of this process needs to see this, you can send it out. It can also be really helpful for your finance team. If you add in some additional columns here, the amount spent so far. If you need to see what your grant ask and award amount was, what that status is, what the type of grant is, we can add all of these columns here, and we can see where they stand, how much has come in, everything that's going on with this grant. So again, that's kind of a really big picture overview of workflow, setting up your note, using tasks and interactions, and then you can come over and it's fully reportable, so that anybody at any time can hop in and see where you stand with your grants. And so from here, once a grant is awarded, you have a couple of options. So the first option is to set it up as a pledge. The reason that you might want to do that is it is very, very rare that a grant is going to come in and it's going to give you that award letter plus the full amount of the grant. With some smaller awards, that's absolutely something that happens. But generally what happens is you get an award letter saying, okay, you've won this grant. Installments are going to be quarterly. Here's the amount. We're going to do it in equal installments. And so this is what you're looking at. So setting that up as a pledge lets you keep track of, are things coming on time? Is it being properly entered? Is everyone aware of it? And then, again, are you properly reporting on that grant money to whatever teams need to know what money is coming into the organization? The other way that you can do it, some organizations would just prefer to set up, that custom field for award amount. So it's $10,000. And then quarterly, you just go in and you enter that gift. Two different ways to do it, kind of depends on, again, your workflow, what you're comfortable with. But that grant award is in fact a pledge. It is that promise of payment that's going to come in. Obviously, you still need to, meet your requirements, reach your, reporting benchmarks, make sure that you are giving all of them the information that they need when it's coming in. A lot of organizations, if you just aren't sending your quarterly reports, there's a possibility they're not going to send you next quarter's money. So make sure that whoever is in charge of those pieces know where to find it, know how to get it, and can go in and actually set that up. So we're going to pretend that NABU has sent us in that money. So we were expecting it on 8/1. So we're going to set that new pledge. They tell us on 7/15 that the check is in the mail. So we're going to say 8/1. It's for $10,000, I believe. That's $100,000. And we are going to go in and we're going to set this up as our 2020 New Republic Fund. We're going to set it as our 2021 annual campaign, and we're going to set this as our 2021 grant. So they're actually going to pay us 2 installments. They are going to pay us the first installment on 8/1, and then they're going to pay us our second installment on 8/11, or I'm sorry, 11/1. So when we come in to set up this schedule, we're going to say the first installment date is going to be 8/1. And then we're going to say the frequent here, we're going to say it's custom. The first installment amount is going to be $5,000. The second one is also going to be $5,000. What is happening? Oh, number of installments, 2, sorry. And so 8/1, and then we're going to say 11/1. And we're going to say $5,000. So then we're going to update the schedule. Let me try this again. 1/20/21, frequency custom. First installment amount is $5,000, number of installments to generate it. So there's the first one. Second one is going to be 11/1/2021 for $5,000. And now we're going to save it. And so now you can see that pledge sitting there. So again, this is a messy record, but we can say we've got this $10,000 that has come in. We know this is for the grant. And then as that money comes in, we'll go in and say new donation. And then it's going to ask me what I want this installment to be. So that is how you set up that pledge. Again, if you just want to do a gift for it when it comes in, you'll come into new donation. You're going to say no thanks if you have pledge payments in there. And we're just going to say 8/1/2021. We know this first amount is going to be $5,000. And then the same deal. We're in this 2021 New Republic, 2021 annual campaign, and we're going to say this is 2021 grant. And then we can say the method, they sent us this check date and check number information, and then anything else, any custom fields that you have for your funds, obviously you'll need to put in, for your dollar amounts, your transactions, you're going to need to put in there, and then you'll save this. So there's a couple of different ways that this will come in. If you're entering it just as donations, you'll see that it comes in saying donation. If you're doing it as a pledge, we have pledge here, and then we can come in and it'll show it as a pledge payment. So we'll come down here and we'll do this one, create our pledge, and we'll say 5,000. As you can see, the fund, campaign, and appeal are already filled out since this is a pledge payment. You can enter check information, any other custom field information you need, save it, and now we'll see that we have the pledge payment. I have no clue what date I put that under, so let's try this. Oh, 5/13. So if we go over there, we'll change this date to 8/1. There we go. So now you're going to see a pledge payment versus a donation. So that's the difference between the two. Obviously, you guys will need to pick one before you enter it, and this is the very reason why it gets really messy really quickly. I would also not necessarily recommend creating a pledge when you apply for the grant. I would wait to see if it's been awarded. But if you do decide to enter it in, the amount that you asked for before it's been awarded, just be aware that there's a potential that you're going to have written off pledges if they don't award you the money. So again, kind of make those decisions for what makes the most sense for your organization, and then set out that policy. If you have a policies and procedures manual, which I absolutely recommend you have, make the decisions on how you're going to enter all of this, and then add that information as a grant section in your policies and procedures manual so that everybody coming in knows exactly what the standards are that your organization is setting for tracking all of this, for data entry, for reporting, and your campaigns, funds, and appeals. So that in general is the workflow overall from the time that you research that grant all the way to the point in time when you receive that payment. So if we go back down to that note, we can click here on notes. We had set this in the future for that 2023 date. Once this comes in, we would say like grant awarded. And you're going to update all of that stuff with the date, first installment, date, second installment, date. And then, as we go through, we'll also want to say, monthly, report is the word I was looking for. Report. Submitted, and then the date. So you'll just keep tracking down that note. You will just keep creating interactions, tasks for all of these, and then you'll come in once this has been awarded, you'll switch this to awarded, and you'll go in and you'll fill out the rest of this information here. So now we know that this was awarded for that full 10,000. Since this is a type it in field, like you can see, you should probably do it a little nicer than that. You can put in that next progress report deadline, the date you submitted it, and then again, make sure that you have your report schedule all filled out. And then, whatever you've spent, you can go in and drop that in if you're following that field as well. So just make sure you're on top of that one note as you go through and you're creating all the rest of those fields for yourself. So now that we've kind of talked about that, we should go take a look at some other records that have some other data on it. So the first one we're going to look at is a record that has awarded a multi-year grant. So our organization for that is the Foundation for Clone Wars Veterans. So we can go to the timeline and we can see what this looks like. So there's a progress report due coming up. We have these pledge payments. We can go down to this note and we can take a look at where we're at with the note. If it's not being updated the way it needs to be, it's a really easy catch, like right here. This is the last thing that we've added in this note. But if you look up, several other things has happened. So making sure that you're updating this note and then either pinning this note to the top or pinning this note as we move up is going to be really, really helpful to do. So make sure that you guys are tracking that and that whoever is doing your grants is properly going through it and making sure that everything is there. But as you can see, this has now popped into 2021 here. So we should probably have some additional steps, but we should be just tracking this through the years as it goes up. So there's no change in what you're doing for a multi-year grant. You're just still following what happens, and then it will jump up to that next timeline. The other really nice thing about having a separate note for this, for annual grants, multi-year grants, just small one-off grants, whatever it is, there may be times when you are in the middle of a grant cycle and then you need to apply for your next grant. So if we knew that the next, letter of inquiry for the next grant for this one was going to be due in August, we can go in, we can set our task up to be, letter of inquiry due in August. And then we would create that new note. It may be the same or slightly different, qualifications, same or different ways we're planning to spend that money, same or different time frame that we're looking at. So you'll put all of that information in your new note, and then you will just continue through with updating that new note and when things have happened. So there are times when you're going to have multiple notes in play here. But like I say, all you're going to do is just keep filling that out. And if it jumps through multi-years, it's not an issue. It's just one continuous timeline for that grant. Let's take a look at one that we were not awarded. So Zerka did not award us a grant. So we can come in and we can take a look at this. And we can see, so there's a note here. So we have that it was children's programming. We did a $10,000 ask. We have some notes here, but we don't have dates for this. So whoever filled this out did not do a great job at recording what was happening. We don't know why it wasn't requested or why it wasn't met. We can see down here what the ask amount was. This says awarded, but we have no other information about this. So this is a terribly kept record, right? So I would come in here and say, no, this was declined. This was absolutely not awarded. We did ask for that $10,000. We didn't get it. We don't even know what dates anything was filled out. So this is not a super helpful note, but we do know that we didn't receive this one. So now if there was a new one coming out from Zerka and we thought, okay, well, maybe we want to ask for that new grant, we want to go through this process again. For this one, we're going to have to dig through, hopefully there's some paper trail somewhere in the office where we can find out what went wrong, what happened, what was sent. Maybe it was that it didn't fit very well, but we still made the ask anyway, and then it didn't get awarded. Maybe we just didn't meet deadlines, which with the way this record keeping is wouldn't be shocking. But, if we can find that information, or if we have a contact at the organization who may have been around, when we made this ask, who might have some additional information, that might be worth seeking out to make sure that, you do a better job this time, to make sure that you are properly filling out this information so that people can see, what's happening. Is this a good fit? Should we even be bothering? Was it just the previous grants person wasn't a great grants person, and you're better, so you can definitely get this grant? It just gives you the ability to make those calls, see what's happening, and have that history of what's happening there or what did happen. So now let's take a look at a grant that we've received several years in a row and what that would look like. So Government of Yavin 4 gives us a brand new grant every year. So if we come down, we can see 2019, if we even back it up to 2018, we set this note. Again, you can kind of decide, are you tracking the note with it? As you can see here, for this organization, we are. So we have this information here. We know that right here, we received this one. So the proposal was sent, everything happened there. 2020, grant proposal submitted, final progress report sent. There's our note. And then so far this year, our grant proposal's been submitted, and we're waiting for it on May 1st is when we're expecting to get it. So this is an example. We get this grant every single year. So I went ahead and just put this pledge payment or this pledge in, anticipating that we're going to get it again this year. They've been really happy with us. We have a great relationship. So as far as different workflows go, this might be a really good argument to make for why sticking that pledge in there before we get awarded the money is okay. If by some fluke of the world we don't get this, then I'll just go in and write this pledge off, and I will just update that note and say, whatever the reasoning is that we have, if we have it, we were not awarded this grant, and then as a group, we've decided we're going to wait a year or 2 years, before we reapply, or we know what went wrong, we're reapplying next year. So again, you can see everything that's happened, and we have this new note for every single year that we're doing this. And then lastly, we're going to look at a record where we have 2 separate grants and we're managing them in tandem. So the Foundation for a Cleaner Kashik gave us 2 grants last year, and we can see final grant reports were sent for both of them. We have a water cleanup grant, and we have a grant for replanting the worship trees. So you can see here, I put this amount and I put this amount, so that when we're looking at the pledges, we can make sure that we understand which pledge corresponds with which grant. And then as we look down this, record here, we can see the different dates that the different pledge payments were coming in. Depending on what your reporting looks like, you're going to make sure that you're reporting properly. For this one, the only report they wanted was an annual report. So should have filled out annual here. But that's all they want. So we just went through and we tracked the number of trees that we planted each month. And then when our final grant report was sent over. So that's all we needed to do for that one, was count our trees, send a final report. For the other one, again, that reporting might look different. So we can still go in and make sure we're doing everything properly for that one. And then, still setting up our tasks for each grant as needed, still making our pledge payments to the appropriate pledge, still going in and doing all of our interactions. And then again, both of those are fully reportable. So that's kind of what a couple of different options here look like for tracking different kinds of grants and, organizational expectations for grants. Yes, it can get a little bit messy when we're doing things like what I'm doing right now and doing it on the fly. But you guys will have that letter come in and you can sit down and do your entry and set out all of your tasks. You guys will have all of those lists of dates in front of you. You can sit down and you can enter all of those dates in as you need them, and all of the pieces of corresponding information. And then, as you're getting your portals, this is where you're going to log in. Here's your username and password. Link that portal over, add your username and password, and then make sure that you're linking everything that was sent. One of the other reasons that I think it can be incredibly helpful to have all of those attachments linked right to your interactions as you complete them. When I manage grants, once or twice, I would get a call from the grantor saying, "Hey, I haven't received your grant report." I could quickly pull up and say, "I sent it on this day. Would it be helpful if I sent you an email, copy of this right now so that you have it?" And then I could quickly pull open that attachment, download it, send it to their email. And then both times that happened to me, I got an email back from them a couple days later saying, "Hey, it just got here. No clue why it took this long. Thank you." But that can be that really easy reassurance for your grantors, especially on those newer relationships, that you've done your work, you have it at your fingertips, and you can get it to them immediately if need be. And then, if something takes a little bit longer next time, there's a chance that they're just going to wait a couple of extra days before reaching out to you, because you've already been able to go in and show that you have that stuff done and that you did send it. It did come in the mail. They did find it, whatever the case is. And so it just builds that trust and that reassurance to them that your organization is on top of things. And then, that goodwill really, really can make a huge impact on following years when you are applying for new grants, because they like you, you're on top of things, and they can really count on you to use that money well and to make sure that you're reporting on things appropriately. All right, so let's go back to the slides and let's take a look. So resources here, I have linked them. Again, you're going to get a copy of the slides, and this is a couple of resources to get you started. All of these have a free version of them, and then 2 of them have some paid versions available to look for grants. So they're linked out. You guys can click through, take a look at grants in your area, or for your NTEE or for your kind of organizational needs, and you guys can start applying for grants. There also might be some local resources. I know Indy has some local resources. If you type in grants available Indianapolis, it'll pull up some different websites that might have some grants on them. Some of them are just straight up foundation grants. Lilly is a big one here in Indy. So we'll have, Lilly might pop up with a couple of grants available that they have. Any sort of local grants through corporations, any kind of foundation grants, you might have resources depending on your market there as well. But every state has a grant site as well, so make sure you're checking that out. All right, I will pop this back over to Diana.
Thanks, Ty. That was a lot of great information. As someone said, it's a lot of just great information flying by, so that the notes and everything is going to be useful for everyone, and we will send out those notes to everyone as well. We have a little bit of time for questions. We have a best practice question here. When attaching things like the LOI or the grant application or reports and award letters, is it best to do that under the note or as separate interactions when they get sent or in the task? is there a best practice way of where to put them?
So I would say either on the note or the interaction. That's just going to be the easiest. If you want everything that you've submitted, again, in one place, putting it on the note is where you should add that. But if you want to be able to say, we want to look at the progress report that was sent in May, it might be easier to click over to that interaction. So again, this just comes down to kind of workflow process, what makes the most sense for your organization.
Awesome, thank you. I just wanted to share, someone put in the chat, grantwatch.com is also a great resource. So we'll add that to our resources as well, so everyone can take a look at that.
Awesome, thank you for that.
I'm looking through the questions real quick. You mentioned creating grantors as constituents. Can you talk about that a little bit and the difference between should they be an individual constituent or organization constituent, and the use of custom fields to differentiate more?
Sure. So I'm going to click back over to Bloomerang to show this. So when you come in to create a new constituent, automatically you have to choose them as an individual or organization. Unless there is some really rich guy who is offering grants specifically from his bank account or her bank account, you're going to want to set them as an organization. So everything that is not like an individual person, foundations, government entities, corporations, all of that should be under organization. As far as custom fields to differentiate, you don't really need them. Some people choose to add a custom field of individual or organization. But if you go into a report, you can sort by one or the other. So if, for example, you just want to see organizations, you're going to come in and you're going to say type, and you can then decide, I want to just see organizations. So that's really the only time that you would need specifically to pull that out, is if you were trying to search on one versus the other. But I would say probably more than 99.99% of the time, your grants are going to be coming from some sort of an organizational entity.
And you can create an organization constituent without having a contact person yet. You can add that after a fact. You can just put in their contact. There's going to be a spot for first name, last name for the primary contact.
Yeah, so I'll show that too. So I'm just opening up Zirka. And just in case anyone doesn't know, in a report, you can right click or you can control click and you can open up just that record in a new tab. Super helpful pro tip there. And then on the profile tab, you have the ability to add contact information. So you can see that we have Zero the Hut here as our primary contact. If you don't have that information, it's absolutely okay. You can come in at any time and edit this, and you can update this primary contact information. There's personal information on that primary contact if you need to add that. And then potentially for different granting entities, they might, this kind of gets weird, especially with foundations. So their employer might be something separate from the foundation, but they're in charge of the foundation. So you're going through them for the grant. So people ask all the time why there's an employer field on organization records, and there are really good reasons for it. Obviously, if Zero the Hut here is your primary contact for Zirka Corporation, and it's a corporation, it's not a foundation, and you know that he works for Zirka Corporation, you may not need to fill out that employer. It might at that point just be redundant. But again, there are good reasons to have that there, and foundations is a good example of that.
Wonderful. And our last question for today is a little bit about security. So if you're putting in the notes, if you put your username and password, do we recommend putting that in Bloomerang so people can access that easily? Like, for example, username and password to a grant portal.
Sure. So what I'll say on that is, if you are an organization that lets a bunch of volunteers into your database, potentially no. but those volunteers would still have to be very aware of your workflow, what's in that note, the fact that that's a grant. There are some other pieces of information that they would need to have. For anybody that's working at your organization, I would hope that you could trust them to not be like submitting things through grant portals. Probably sounds like an HR conversation if you can't really trust them not to do that. So the hope is, since you need a username and password to get into Bloomerang, and since that information is in a note kind of buried, it shouldn't be a security risk. If you are concerned that it might become a security risk, again, because of volunteers or, maybe some sketchy coworkers, then probably keep the username and password out of Bloomerang. So again, that's just kind of specific to whatever's going on at your organization.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we're right about time. If anyone has additional questions, please feel free to reach out. Don't hesitate to reach out, and we will be happy to answer those questions for you. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us, learning all about grant tracking and how you can use Bloomerang to help you with that part of your work. Thank you again. Any last words for our friends today, Di?
I know that the workflow at the beginning can kind of seem overwhelming when you're setting all of this up, but I absolutely promise that if you are appropriately entering in tasks and creating those interactions, it is really going to streamline your grant process and make it really, really accessible and easy to use. So definitely, though, make sure you're updating your policies and procedures so everyone knows what's supposed to be happening there.
Awesome. Thank you again, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we hope to see you in another Academy class soon. Bye.